Unfortunately, due to the high-profile deaths of several teens in recent years, too many young black men still, or maybe again, succumb to the notion that they are an endangered species. A recent study reported by dozens of major news outlets showed that nearly half of all black men are arrested by the age of 23. Their recklessness is a symptom of their hopelessness. They put themselves in harm's way and live by a motto of "you only live once" because they feel their demise is inevitable and they don't feel valued. They identify with criminals and murder victims and are encouraged by social media campaigns to accept the role of a surrogate victim with t-shirts and hashtags like "I am Michael Brown" or "I am Trayvon Martin." They are completely embracing the defeatist mentality. That mindset is as fatal, if not worse, than the systematic failures of the criminal justice system that is currently making headlines and being protested across the nation. In 1994, I had been working for a nonprofit gang prevention organization. I was 21 years old and still wet behind the ears. I was actually on probation myself and had gotten the job a couple years prior as part of court mandated community service. But eventually I began working for the organization full time, speaking on their behalf to donors and corporate sponsors and to younger kids about the dangers of gang violence. And even though I had little to no experience of working with young people, I figured like in AA where alcoholics with more recovery experience help newer members, I could help younger gang members make better decisions than what I had. So I started a support group at a middle school with 4 or 5 kids who were just on the fringes and one kid named Shamar who was up to his eyeballs in gang-related activity. Crips, so he had been raised in and by the gang for all of his 13 or 14 years. Our group would meet for an hour once a week, and they would talk about why it was that they were fascinated with the gang element, and I would try to extinguish their fascination and their attraction to being in the gang by telling them all the bad things I knew about being involved, including how and why I got on probation. But Shamar, he was already jaded to the horror stories. He had experienced things way worse than anything I had ever been through. He was coming to our group because he was looking for a way out. He was looking for an alternative life. He was seeking hope. So he and we bonded on a different level. I understood where he was coming from and he could relate to what I had been through. And that's why it was like so difficult and I was so devastated when he was killed just a few months after we had began the group. I couldn't save him. I couldn't even save myself. I didn't know or have what it took to build a successful life. Dr. Carter G. Woodson wrote in The Miseducation of the Negro that if you can control what a man thinks, you don't have to worry about what he will do. If you could make a man feel inferior, you won't have to compel him to seek an inferior status. He will do so without being told. Growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, I and thousands of young black men were constantly told that we were part of an endangered species.
They shot my brother. They shot my brother.
Being a black man in America isn't easy. All I'm saying is survive. Menace to society. The hunt is on, and you're the prey.
We were repeatedly reminded that we had a better chance of going to prison than going to college, as if that path was predestined for us. So it was really no surprise that I found myself in prison just a few years after Shamar died. However, going to prison was probably the best thing that could ever happen to me. It was while locked up that I began to understand the cliche that failing to plan is planning to fail. I began to understand and realize that the lack of goals and ambition and direction in my life led directly to me landing on the shore of the island of failure. I began to study respected names in personal development and success skills, like Napoleon Hill and Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar and Les Brown and Tony Robbins and many more. And I applied their lessons to my life and saw immediate and long-lasting changes in my life, including the achievement of my first goal, never returning to prison. Learning why and how to set and achieve goals changed the lens through which I viewed my life. I developed a confidence that allowed me to break the mental and cultural shackles of which Dr. Whitson spoke. I know my story is not typical, and that's why I've spent several years creating and developing Be Better Than Average and the associated curriculum and workshops. Over the past year, I've worked hard to establish Be Better Than Average as a recognized and respected movement aimed at teaching success skills and providing personal development training and life coaching services. More recently, the staff and I at Kenton Elementary School have implemented an after-school workshop based on the BTA curriculum for a group of male students identified as being in most need of direction and support. It is critical that as many of these young men as possible have the opportunity to be taught fundamental life skills and proven success strategies that will establish a solid spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial foundation. This will allow them to maximize their potential and lead fulfilling, productive lives. The end game is providing enough inspiration, encouragement, motivation, support, wisdom, and training, plus real-life examples of success through mentors and guest speakers, that these young men change how they perceive themselves and eventually how society views them. Sherry Brights and I have recruited mentors to teach the focused and curated curriculum and coach and train these boys through the process of setting and meeting expectations for themselves that challenge and bring about meaningful personal development. At the completion of this workshop, the boys will engage in a rite of passage ceremony, where their effort, progress, and newly developed success skills will be recognized and celebrated. They will be presented with certificates of accomplishment and t-shirts with the Be Better Than Average motto printed on them. Building these boys into better than average young men is a community effort which I invite you to commit to support. You can sponsor one or several of the boys currently enrolled in the workshop or future participants by purchasing Be Better Than Average t-shirts, which will be presented in the rite of passage ceremony. All funds raised will go towards establishing a budget supporting and continuing the Be Better Than Average mission. Funds raised will also go towards publishing the curriculum, so to be able to share it with other schools and programs directly involved in developing young men of color into future leaders.